Historical records tell us that during the most corrupt period in ancient Rome, the Roman nobility ignored the suffering of their country, indulging instead in constant feasting. They attended 5 to 6 banquets daily, consuming more food than their own body weight. Humans cannot digest such massive amounts of food, so the Romans invented emetics to vomit the food after each meal, allowing them to attend the next feast with an empty stomach. Over the millennia that followed, to caution the European nobility, Christianity designated gluttony as one of the 7 deadly sins, yet this vice continued through generations. The nobility often produced big eaters like Sun King Louis XIV, known for his voracious appetite, consuming 3 people's portions at each of his 5 daily meals. The last known gluttonous noble was a modern Egyptian king who loved gourmet food so much that he eventually ate himself to death, earning him the title, the last pharaoh, Farouk. Farouk I, also known as King Farouk, was the last monarch of Egypt under the feudal system. His reign was marked by indulgence and mismanagement. He was more focused on leisure and lavish eating than on governing, which eventually led to the loss of his throne. After his abdication, Farouk lived in exile in Italy, where he reportedly ate himself to death. But what kind of person was Farouk I? What bizarre experiences did he have, and how did he spend the last days of his life? Historically, Egypt was successively occupied by the Romans and Arabs, leading to a disruption of its native culture. In the 15th century, Egypt was conquered by the Ottoman Empire and became a province within its realms. With the rise of modern Europeans, Egypt faced invasion by Napoleon in the early 19th century. Although the Ottomans managed to repel Napoleon with British support, the local warlord Muhammad Ali seized the opportunity to rise to power, which eventually led to Egypt's independence. In 1805, the uprising in Egypt had overthrown the rule of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Sultan, with no better option, appointed Muhammad Ali as the governor of Egypt. This governorship, while nominally under Ottoman control, functioned independently, essentially making Muhammad Ali the local monarch. His regime came to be known as the Muhammad Ali dynasty, the last feudal dynasty in the history of Egypt. Throughout the 19th century, the Muhammad Ali dynasty in Egypt grappled with entanglements from British, French, and Ottoman forces, struggling to maintain its independence. By the end of the 19th century, however, Egypt had become a British colony. In the early 20th century, the dynasty was ruled by Sultan Fuad I, during which time Egypt included parts of what is now northern Sudan, and the Egyptian monarch held the title King of the Nile, Egypt, and Sudan. Supported by the British, Fuad I served more as a puppet monarch. The real governance was handled by local bureaucrats and businessmen, reducing him to a ceremonial figure. However, as a king of the Ali dynasty, the issue of succession weighed heavily on Fuad. His wives bore him many daughters, but only one son, who was the original heir but tragically died young. Facing a potential end to his dynasty due to a lack of male successors, the aging Fuad was distressed, unable to eat or sleep. Miraculously, in 1920, when Fuad was 52, his queen, Nazli Sabri, bore him a son, Farouk, who Fuad saw as a divine gift. Farouk became the sole male heir and was regarded by his father as the continuation of his dynasty. In 1922, Egypt declared independence from British control, and Fuad proclaimed himself the King of Egypt, appointing his son Farouk as the heir apparent. Eager to provide his son with the finest education, Fuad sent Farouk to a prestigious public school in England for a proper British education. With his handsome appearance and privileged background, Farouk became quite popular at school. He fully embraced his identity as a prince, sometimes when intoxicated, insisting his classmates address him as Your Majesty. After several years in England, Farouk became fluent in English and developed excellent calligraphy skills. However, his academic accomplishments were otherwise limited. The carefree Farouk, who spent his days attending cues and balls, made numerous girlfriends, leaving a trail of romantic encounters. In 1936, while 16-year-old Farouk was enjoying his life in England, he received devastating news. His father, King Farouk I, had died at the age of 68, and he was required to return to Egypt to assume the throne. Farouk tearfully bid farewell to his classmates in England and prepared to take over the royal duties. However, due to his young age, it was not until the summer of 1937 that Farouk officially became the King of Egypt. People familiar with Egypt might know that although the country is vast, most of it is desert, with nearly the entire population concentrated along the banks of the Nile River. Particularly the Nile Delta, which occupies only 1/50th of Egypt's total area, houses 1/3 of the country's population. Egypt is predominantly an underdeveloped agricultural nation, yet its kings have extracted wealth amounting to $100 million from this impoverished state. The inheritance left to Farouk by his father Fuad included farmland, hotels, ports, and canal shares, among others. Tens of thousands of farmers toiled on the royal king's fields to sustain the royal family, while Farouk freely spent the money from the royal bank account, living a life of leisure. In 1938, the 18-year-old Farouk married, marking his transition into adulthood. However, Farouk was still immature and unaware of the responsibilities resting on his shoulders. He longed for his carefree student days in England, and now, as king, aimed to replicate that lifestyle in Egypt. Thus, within the first year of his marriage, Farouk began having affairs. He dispatched his aides to scout for beauties. Actresses, singers, journalists, socialites were all welcome. Farouk would invite these women to balls or social gatherings under the guise of hospitality, then use his wealth to win them over and turn them into his mistresses. According to later memoirs by Farouk's queen, Farida, Farouk I had affairs with over 100 women. In his later years, Farouk even lived with his mistresses, often not seen by the queen for weeks. After enduring this for 10 years, Farida divorced Farouk in 1948. Beyond his philandering, Farouk's greatest passion was for food. As part of the former Ottoman Empire, the Egyptian royal family adopted the extravagant dining habits of the Ottoman royals, leading to excessively lavish feasts. The extravagance was such that even the British colonizers once lamented, "The Egyptian king's breakfast costs what a peasant earns in a week." Farouk inherited these excessive habits, but unlike his forebears who were extravagant for show, he truly loved to eat. According to British accounts, Farouk's breakfast included dozens of eggs, along with plenty of milk, rice, and dried fruits. For lunch, he consumed large quantities of beef, lamb, roast chicken, roast goose, jam, and flatbreads. He once startled the royal butler by eating 40 roast quails in one meal, prompting an intervention. Typically, after dates with his mistresses, Farouk would listen to music while indulging in European cakes and chocolates, Arab pastries, and African fruits, stuffing himself without restraint. After eating, he would drink, favoring wine in the evenings and guzzling up to 30 bottles of German beer during the day, a feat that was astonishing to many. This way of eating and drinking drastically altered Farouk's physique. Once a handsome young man, he rapidly gained weight after becoming king, tipping the scales at over 250 pounds by his 30s, transforming into a very obese man. Farouk set records in gluttony and lascivious behavior, but he still found life tediously unexciting and lacked thrills. He once loved speed racing, but the poor traffic conditions in Egypt did not satisfy his craving. Ultimately, he developed a liking for theft, treating it as a pastime and diligently honing his skills to become famously known as the King of Thieves. Farouk I's penchant for theft was not news in Egypt at that time. Every time a banquet was held in the royal palace, ministers and nobles had to attend in their finest attire, and that's when Farouk would make his move, favoring watches, jewelry, and cash as his loot. The Egyptian nobility also found themselves in a quandary. Attending banquets adorned with gold and jewels meant bleeding money, but not wearing them might make the king suspect they were guarding against him. Thus, the nobles started wearing counterfeit jewelry to satisfy Farouk's penchant for theft. To refine his pilfering skills, Farouk even recruited a seasoned pickpocket from Cairo's prison as his tutor, diligently practicing the art of theft. In gratitude, he eventually managed to get his teacher released from prison. Once skilled, Farouk roamed various balls and evening parties within the palace, stealing from guests to add to his personal collection. It's said he could remove lipstick from a lady's handbag without detection. One of his most infamous deeds was the successful theft of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill's pocket watch. In 1944, during Churchill's visit to Egypt, they met briefly. After the meeting, Churchill realized his cherished pocket watch was missing. He initially thought he had misplaced it and didn't suspect Farouk. However, upon discovering the truth and demanding its return, Farouk stubbornly refused, only relenting after stern protests from the British government. During that same year, Farouk also stole burial items from the coffin of the Iranian king as it passed through Egypt, including a sword, a belt, and medals. After World War II, as independence movements swept across Asian and African colonies, Egypt, though already independent, was still heavily influenced by Britain, and Farouk remained a figurehead. In the 1940s and 1950s, with the outbreak of Middle Eastern conflicts, the Arab nationalist movement in Egypt gained momentum, leading to widespread disdain for the decaying Ali dynasty. In 1952, Gamal Abdel Nasser, leading the Free Officers movement, overthrew King Farouk I. Farouk fled Europe aboard his yacht. As he departed from the port of Alexandria, he attempted to transport over 30 boxes of jewels overseas, which were seized by the revolutionary forces. Subsequently, Farouk lived in Greece and Italy, and during this time, his second wife divorced him. In his later years, Farouk lost his income sources, but still lived a lavish life in Rome, supported by the British government. After his divorce, Farouk felt profoundly lonely and sought comfort in food. In 1965, at the age of 45, Farouk suddenly died and was quickly buried. According to those close to him, the former king literally ate himself to death. On March 18th, the day of his death, the over 200-pound Farouk consumed 12 large Mediterranean lobsters, more than 10 oysters, 5 bowls of mixed fried rice, 8 steamed fish, 2 large flatbreads, and endless side servings of jams, yogurts, nuts, and fruits. After eating, Farouk lay down on the sofa to rest and never woke up. The ability to eat oneself to death is quite a feat. Known as both the King of Gluttons and the King of Thieves, this last pharaoh left a lasting impression on humanity with his notorious exploits.